Hoda, if there's one area in which there might be progress, what area do we think that might be?
Well, there's a lot of speculation at the moment. I think one of the points that the Palestinians would like to hear about is where does President Trump stand when it comes to the two-state solution. He has in the past said that one state, two states, he likes whatever solution both parties agree on. Well, Palestinians are certainly looking for a two-state solution, and probably they would like to hear from Trump, or at least have him make a public statement from Bethlehem, occupied West Bank, backing the two-state solution. They would probably also like to hear him talk about the right of self-determination for the Palestinians. Now, is it going to go further than that? Are they good conversations? The two men are meeting right now behind closed doors. They are due to make a joint statement shortly. We will hear more about that soon. But I think the Palestinians also would like to know how did the conversation go with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and whether he is willing to take those confidence-building steps that they have been asking so much about. There's so many things really up in the air at the moment. There's so many conversations that have not been made public so far, and I think what everybody wants to hear about, probably even the Israelis, is what is the next step in the vision of President Trump himself. And this is the one unknown, this is the one big unknown at this stage, at least publicly.
Mr. Abbas has his critics. They say of him, he's not as politically strong as he should be to build a dynamic to take the Palestinians through this embryonic process, if indeed that is what it is just about to turn into. His political backstory, is that a subtlety that the American administration is across? Is it something they're engaged with?
Well, certainly President Abbas comes under a lot of criticism by the Palestinians. Some of them say he is way too weak in front of the Israelis. He is giving in too much. Others say, you know, he's been there for such a long time. Maybe it's time for change. You do hear that here. You also do hear a lot of criticism on behalf of the Israelis who say that he's not a man of peace, that he's not controlling his people, that he has people within his own administration, within the Palestinian Authority, that are inciting violence, and he can't keep a lid on them. You do hear a lot of criticism from all sides, but at the end of the day, he is the man, and he is the only person to speak to at the time. I think after his visit to Washington, the opinion of President Trump, at least publicly from what we heard and seen, has changed substantially. President Trump, you do get the feeling that President Abbas came away from Washington quite satisfied that he had the backing of President Trump. He came here strong with that. When he was in Riyadh, the two men met again. There is this momentum that you have Arab countries and Muslim countries behind this initiative, behind this push that could maybe lead to a final status agreement. You know, when this Arab initiative was first put forward back in 2002, it was talk only about the 22 Arab countries. Israel would get normalizations with all of them in one go in exchange for a peace deal, a final agreement with the Palestinians. Well, that has evolved now. We're talking about 55 countries since the Riyadh summits. It's not only normalization with the 22 Arab countries, but also with other Muslim non-Arab countries. So the Palestinians are saying, well, this is a really good deal for the Israelis, but at the end of the day, the crux of the matter is ending an occupation that has been so complicated. It has been so difficult to reach that. Oslo agreements were signed 24 years ago now. At the time, the reality of the ground was much less complicated than it is now. There was no separation wall. The settlements were much less. They at least doubled since then. So, you know, now, even if that remains the basis for any negotiations, things have changed since then. Maps have changed, realities have changed, and then you then have the very difficult issue of Jerusalem. I mean, we've seen yesterday several Israeli officials underlining, welcoming President Trump to the eternal and capital of Israel. That's not the way the Palestinians see it. They see East Jerusalem as the capital of their future state, and that is probably the most difficult of all conversations. It has been put into the final status agreement, but it's one that is probably going to be the most complicated to solve. When it comes to settlements, you do hear from Palestinian officials that they could swap some land where a settlement is already a reality, a de facto reality. You can't change that. Swap some land of that for other areas, as long as it's in equal quantity and quality of land, so that you do see that there's a window of compromise that could be reached there. Jerusalem is a completely different story, and it will be extremely complicated.
So we got three issues there. We got occupation, Jerusalem, and the question of stopping or slowing the expansion of Israeli settlements. Is occupation the big issue?
Yes, occupation is the one banner under which all of this goes. At the end of the day, the Palestinians say we have been occupied for decades. We want an end to the occupation. We want our authorities to be in full charge of everything regarding our lives. So yes, that is the big banner, but there's so many details under that. There's so many sub-chapters coming under that to end the occupation, and that is really where things become extremely complicated for both sides, because also the Israelis have been selling to their public much more that they can actually deliver when it comes to this matter. So that's the main headline is end the occupation. How to reach that is just a road full of pitfalls and obstacles. I think also one of the conversations we heard over the past few days is the issue of relocating the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. President Trump hasn't spoken about that at all, and I think the all indication is that that subject has been put to the side at the moment. Well, Palestinians are wondering, will that become another chapter in the final status agreement? How are we going to deal with that issue? So as much as time goes on, the amount of issues to deal with become more complicated and become also more in numbers.
Very briefly, Hoda, how much trust do Palestinians place in Mr. Abbas?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. I think there is this sort of attitude, well, he is the president, we have no other choice. But that, as I said, he comes under a lot of criticism, especially from the youth. You have to understand that about 1 in 3 Palestinians are unemployed, and most of them are young people. So he has a big problem with that. I remember just a year ago when there's this intense clashes going on across the occupied West Bank, the youth were saying that it was not only against the Israelis that they were revolting, but also against the Palestinian Authority, because they would see President Abbas maybe out of touch with the needs of the youth. Maybe he was a bit, for them, too old. He had been there for such a long time. He has been given a chance, and nothing actually concrete happened. So people do look at him a bit, some of them at least, with a bit of skepticism, wondering if he's going to cave in, according to their point of view, to more Israelis' demands or not. So he does have this issue, and he's very aware of that.
Hoda, for the time being, many thanks. Hoda Abdelhamid, our correspondent there.